Welcome into another episode of Gridiron Eve. I'm John Vogel. That's Mike Huesmann. You can follow me on Twitter at DraftVogel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can follow him on Twitter at HuesmanCFB. Mike, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back here. Another big slate of games coming up. Should be some real fun football to see, and looking forward to it. I think you made the comment last week that this was our last Wednesday without games. So starting next week, we will have college football on more nights of the week for sure.
Non-stop football.
Yeah.
All through the month of October, every night we got games. It's going to be a good time. That's my favorite time of the year.
Oh,
Non-stop.
for sure. Yeah.
Best time of the year. So this week in review, it was a very interesting week, I'd say, for both of us, wouldn't you?
I would absolutely agree with that. Yes.
The picks, I'm getting them pulled up on my side here because I don't have them in front of me at the moment. But overall, I believe we were on the plus side, which is a good thing. Both of us between the picks that we made. So starting with your picks from last week. Let's see. Is this last? No, this wasn't last week. For some reason, I don't have your picks from last week.
So my picks last week were Ole Miss +7 against Alabama. I did not hit that one.
Challenged it in a one.
You did challenge that one. Yep. And then the one that I challenged you on was yours, Western Kentucky +3 against Troy. I like Troy. Western Kentucky, or it was 4, sorry, because had it been 3, I would have won, but they got that late score, and Western Kentucky covered that for you. So that was our closest one. And then I had Notre Dame +3.5 against Ohio State, and
they covered.
The Irish lost it late, but they did cover. Yeah.
Yep. And I challenged you on that one, going with Ohio State.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a fun week. I told you Alabama was back, though, man. I told you they had it figured out.
You did. You certainly did say that. Yeah. And then I know my other games, I had Liberty -3.5 against Buffalo. Or no, sorry. That was, I'm going back even further than I have to for that one.
Yeah, I was about to say that was one I made. I know I made that one.
That was one. Yeah, I was looking back at our old.
Yeah, because I did the same. I did the same thing too, and
somehow
I guess they didn't get up on Twitter last week. But I think it was a good week. I think we both missed at least one game on what we were doing.
Yeah. I actually just found them. So my other ones were the Utah State James Madison game. And I had that one at JMU -5.5. They barely covered that one. They won by 7. South Carolina -4.5 against Mississippi State. Gamecocks won that. They covered by a touchdown. And then Texas State and Nevada, that was a 16.5 point spread I had with Texas State. They did not cover that. So Texas State struggled through that one, especially early. They got down 17-0. Then they came back and won it 35-24.
That was one I wanted to challenge, and I was just like, I don't know if I can.
And I get that. So I was 3-2 on mine. And then I have yours. Rougher week for you, though. In the challenges, you beat me 2-1. In the picks overall, NC State -9.5 against Virginia. Wolfpack did not cover that. That was the Friday
that was surprisingly game. A really good game.
Yeah, very. And it's like NC State just couldn't get out of second gear. They won by 3, and then Virginia had that bizarre scenario at the end of the game where they had the multiple penalties, and that allowed NC State to kick the last second field goal after. Auburn +7.5 at Texas A&M. Aggies look pretty good, even with losing Wegman. Max Johnson came in, did solid. You nailed the Western Kentucky one, and I challenged and lost on that one. Colorado did not cover their plus 21 against Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then your last game was Colorado State plus 3.5 against Middle Tennessee. You were at that game. Tell us how that was.
Yeah, it was a good time. MTSU definitely had a hotter start. Colorado State fell behind, I think, 17-10 at one point. Colorado State stormed back, took a 31-17 lead. MTSU attempted to come back, but ultimately fell short. They lost. So not only did Colorado State cover that game, they won it outright. So
was it 31-20?
31-23.
23. Yep. Okay, it was an 8-point game. Okay.
Yep. Went for, I believe, a extra point got blocked, and that's why it wasn't 24.
Sense. Okay.
Yep. But it was a fun time. We had a great time. It was. This is going to sound like a brag, but there are 4 NFL scouts there. I knew 2 of them, so
awesome. No,
that was nice to get into a game and go, oh yeah, I know some of these guys, and we had a good time chatting about a bunch of different stuff. So it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the score right now, Mike.
Yep.
Mike has surrendered his first lead.
Yeah.
And I lead for the first time in this show this year, 25-20. We got some work to do on this game this week. I got to build that lead up a little bit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You'll have the chance. We're gonna have some challenges out there, I'm sure of. So I know I got.
Are you ready to get into these picks?
I'm ready. Is there anything else we have to cover outside of the norm? Mel Tucker officially fired. I think that's about the only big news. Talked about Connor Wegman being hurt and major injury news. Tyler Shuck is injured. Texas Tech's been kind of a zombie this year, but it sounds like Shuck is going to take the medical red shirt and come back for year 7 in 2024.
Another medical red. Oh my goodness.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's had a lot of injuries over his career. That's really why he hasn't played that much. Yeah. But when you're running the ball, I think 25 times a game as a quarterback, that's tough. That's really tough to do. So if he does come back for a 7th year, maybe that's a good thing for Texas Tech. I don't know. I don't know who's in the wings.
It'll be interesting. I brought this up today. If Morton looks good right now, or if he looks good the rest of the year, if you're Shuck and if you're Joey McGuire, you probably say, thanks, buddy, but it's time to grad transfer somewhere else.
And came to Texas Tech from Oregon before he was a graduate, so he's got the pass on that. Yes. Does have an eligible grad transfer. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, looked into that. He certainly does. And he has already graduated. The guy already has. I looked this up today as part of this question. He has 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree already. So good, using his college wisely.
Yeah, he's probably about to go get 2 more masters.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. No, and I think we talked about Mel Tucker last week. We knew that was coming at some point.
Writing was on the wall,
Yeah, no, when you have those kind of allegations floating around, your time is limited.
Yeah.
But they conducted their internal review and found that they could fire him with cause, which they did. So away goes the $90 million they owed him because it was with cause.
It was.
But on the brighter side of things, we got some football.
We do. We got some good ones. Yep.
You like to start us off round 1, Utah +3 over Oregon State.
I do.
It's a Friday night game too. Yep. Yeah, Friday night game.
Utah is a team that, despite all the injuries and everything seemingly being stacked against them, they keep winning. They keep running the ball. Their O-line is playing very well in the run game. We've seen them, especially against Baylor, play a not-so-good game and still come out on top. They're going to be tough for anybody. And I think in Oregon State, we see a team that likes to do a lot of similar things, namely run the ball, keep a tight end in, blocking, things like that. And I just don't think dude for dude they quite match up with Oregon. Nate Johnson has looked all right when he's in,
Mm-hmm.
and so's Bryson Barnes. We're hearing Rising might be back. I'm not as promising about Keithy, but good chance I think that we see Cam Rising in his first game this fall on offense. Or sorry, we're talking about running backs though. There have been some injuries. Micah Bernard, who I believe was on your fantasy team, done for the year, but
Yeah.
Jaquin Jackson has looked solid, and then Jalen Glover has kind of moved into that role that Bernard vacated. Looked all right, and defensively, Utah is still solid. I don't think they're going to have a drop off there anytime soon. No. Oregon State, pretty good team. DJU is looking better. It's looking like maybe Tony Elliott was the problem and not him. And Damian Martinez and Deshaun Fenwick, both good running backs. I think Jonathan Smith is a guy, I've brought up his name a few times in my stuff with Farrell, that he's an appealing coach for a Peak 5 team that is in the market for one. I think you capitalize on the uncertainty with Oregon State not having a conference moving forward, as well as he's kind of making a pittance pay-wise compared with your other P5 schools. So I like Oregon State, but in this one, I like Oregon to just go there and keep doing what they've been doing. So I like the Utes in this one with Utah.
Yeah, and the other thing too I'm going to point out is that defense is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a lot better than solid. I think that they're really, really good. They held UCLA to 14 points last week on the road, I believe, or 10 points in that win. And they are tough. They're physical. We saw them handle a Florida team really well, who, we thought was terrible after that game, but it might have honestly just been the defense that they were playing against.
Yeah.
But I think that Oregon State game and the Washington State game was a very emotional loss for them. I think that took a lot out of them. I like Utah at +3 as well. I think there's a really good chance they win that game outright.
Another one to, in hindsight, I think when Utah won their first game, everybody kind of was jumping on Napier and trashing the Gators. They don't look so bad though. That win against Florida looks a lot better now than it did right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like Penn State -26.5 over Northwestern for obvious reasons. Northwestern has been pretty much a no contest this year for basically anybody that they've played. Northwestern has looked really ugly this year. Penn State, on the other hand, seems to have a lot of things figured out. Drew Lar's done a great job so far this year. The running back duo is awesome between Allen and Singleton. There's not a lot to not like about Penn State and their pass rush unit too. We can't talk about them without talking about the pass rushing unit. It's legit. Yeah. They get after people, and there's some dudes that are really making a case on the NFL side of this when you start looking at the draft. But Northwestern has had one good game that was really against UTEP. Now, granted, the Minnesota game. Minnesota has not looked great this year at all either.
No, my home state Gophers. Parts of it were fluky, but also Minnesota didn't do what they had to do. They're not a great team this year.
Penn State's going to shut Northwestern down. Yeah. It's probably going to be about by 4 touchdowns. It might even be by 31. I really like Penn State here. Yeah. I think that's a good bet.
This is one of those games that I'm not challenging it because I could see it being like a 48-10 type game, 45-10, somewhere in there. Penn State, I think they will eventually take their foot off the gas, but it won't be early. They'll let the guys roll for a while, and Penn State's one of those few teams in the country right now where if you look at them, you're not going to find many weaknesses. There's not many areas they're deficient in. We've talked about them as a possible playoff team, and until they lose, they're certainly in the mix. They're going to give Michigan and Ohio State all they have, and I don't think it'll shock anybody if they get in. Not that I would necessarily pick them right now, but this is probably their best chance they've had to make the postseason or the playoffs.
Yeah.
Be a title contender in a while. And yeah, I think this is a 35-point win minimum.
You also like Cal minus 11 over Arizona State.
I think Arizona State is a really poor football team this year that is not really trying to win games. Everything Arizona State is doing is playing for next year. They've, they made the move to Rashada, which maybe he was the guy anyway, but early on, they self-imposed the ban for no bowl game this year. They weren't going to make a bowl game anyway. Elijah Badger is a pretty good player. Scadaboo, the FCS transfer from Sacramento State, is looking all right running the ball. But that Arizona State team is bad on defense. They are not stopping anybody. And I truly think Dillingham is using this as a year zero because that most of that team will return next year if they stay there. They're getting the younger guys in the system. Everybody's learning their ways. And it is about preparing that team for 2024. On the flip side, Cal is looking better than we thought they would. And they probably had to because a really bad season and Justin Wilcox may have gotten the axe. That won't happen anymore. Cal right now is 2-2. They beat North Texas and Idaho. They lost to Auburn in a close game. Then last week we saw them go down at Washington, who's looked amazing. But Cal looked pretty good on offense. They scored over 30 points. There were definitely some good things they did in that game. And they're going to be at home in this one. Ben Finley is looking decent at QB after, Sam Jackson went down. Jade Knott and Isaiah Fanzi both running the ball well. And I think Cal just gets it done in this game by multiple scores, which is obviously the spread I'm picking it at. But I like Cal in this one.
The one thing about Cal that I came into the year realizing was their defensive line is really good. Really good. Even by, if you were to take those guys out and put them in the SEC, they would hold their ground.
Okay. Yeah.
Their NFL guys, Brett Johnson is on that line. I know there's another guy and I can't think of his name, but they are really good there. And they've got a few skill position players too that can stand out. So I agree. Yeah. I think the Cal minus 11 is kind of a no-brainer here. I'm really surprised the spread is as low as it is. This feels like this should probably be a 3-touchdown spread, especially with the way Arizona State's played. I guess they're taking into account that they scored some points against USC last week. But I don't think that that's anything they continue.
Was Derek Wilkins one of the guys you were thinking about? Him and Correa are the two D linemen I could think of that might be the other one.
I could pull them
but
up.
But nothing's popping
actually
to my mind. Yeah.
I know Brett Johnson.
Yeah.
Ethan
Saunders is one I
Saunders. That's the other one I was thinking of.
Saunders.
Yeah. Ethan Saunders. Xavier Carlton's even pretty good as an edge rusher. And then, the linebackers are good too.
They are.
Jackson Sermon was a heck of a get for them out of the portal.
If you think about it, like in some ways, Justin Wilcox, who had come to Cal after being the D coordinator at Wisconsin, we're kind of seeing a style of defense like he played there. That 4-3 stout inside guys. And it makes sense if you think about it.
I like Pitt minus 2.5 over Virginia Tech. We talked about this game before we came on the air a little bit. Pitt is, well, first off, Virginia Tech has been absolutely horrendous this year. I have no idea what's going on inside that program. They did all right. Not really, but they pulled some guys that were interesting out of the portal. But nothing really has popped at all for them this year. They have not looked up to par with the rest of the ACC. Now, Pitt has also been disappointing. They took a couple losses they probably shouldn't have. West Virginia, but when you put these two teams against each other, I think Pitt wins this by way more than a field goal. So Phil Dracovic is there.
Yeah.
They like some of the stuff that he's been doing. They're going to be able to run the ball on Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech just hasn't shown any ability to stop that yet. I like Pitt at 2.5.
Yeah.
I think that's a no-brainer.
These are two teams that are both 1-3 that look totally opposite of each other.
Yeah.
Pitt has, they were in a tight one against Cincinnati. They were in one that against West Virginia was tight for most of it. Then North Carolina wasn't as tight, but that was to be expected. And Pitt still seems tough though. Like there are some things they're doing well, and the bounces haven't went their way. Virginia Tech looks the opposite. They have Pitt, and then next week they go to Florida State. They're probably going to be 1-5. And looking at that schedule, they won their first game against Old Dominion, and they might not win a game until the last game against Virginia if they win that. I mean, we could be looking at a 2-10 season, or worst case 1-11 in Brent Pry's second year there. And like I've written about this a little bit for Farrell. I hate to put year 2 guys on the hot seat. Pry is on that right now. They just don't look promising in many areas. Their QB play's been, Drones is dinged up, Wells is dinged up. Neither of them look good. Their line play isn't great. They're taking all kinds of penalties, and they just look like a team that doesn't have a direction. So this game was one, I'll usually initially write down 8 to 10 games and, narrow it down. This game with Pitt was one of them that didn't make the cut for me. So I'm right with you on this one.
Moving on, you like Louisville -3 over North Carolina State.
Louisville's a good team. They're doing a lot of things well. Braum has come in, and Jack Plummer followed him, who is, as of late, Plummer's looking really good. Jawar Jordan has been a standout at running back. He's getting a lot of yards, breaking off long ones, getting in the end zone. And the star on offense has really been Jamari Thrash, the transfer coming in from Georgia State.
He's been phenomenal. Yeah,
who's looking like one of the best receivers in the country, and almost like an unguardable guy at this point. NC State, on the other hand, a team who I'm usually high on it. Program-wise, I still am. Dave Dorn has been extremely consistent since he's been there. But they were lucky to beat a bad Virginia team last week. They got trounced by Notre Dame. They were average in beating a UConn team that's just okay. And then they beat FCS VMI. But this NC State team, I thought would be better with Brennan Armstrong coming in. They just haven't been. This is not going to be one of Dave Dorn's best teams. I don't know that they make a bowl game in the end. That schedule's pretty salty coming up. It's funny, we were just talking about Virginia Tech. They lost to Marshall last week. NC State plays Marshall next week. So be a big test for them. And for NC State, that's probably a must-win game if you want to go to a bowl game. But even though this game is in Raleigh, another Friday game. So 2 of the games I've picked so far have been Friday night games.
Yep.
I like Louisville to get this done by 3.
So I have to, Mike. I have to.
Okay.
I'm challenging you.
Okay.
I'm challenging this pick. And Louisville has been very impressive so far. I think in their games they played outside of maybe the game against Georgia Tech, was probably the one they were least impressive in, but they've been really good and they've been pretty consistent.
Yeah, it was a season opener. Yeah.
The one thing that I've noticed about the ACC over the last few years is this is a conference that beats each other up. When you are a team that's showing promise and you're going into a game like this, it's like that's fuel for a team like North Carolina State. and they rise up. They play really well. I know that I just picked Pitt over Virginia Tech, but I think that's a different situation. North Carolina State's still figuring a lot of stuff out. That's for sure. Brennan Armstrong's the quarterback there, who transferred from Virginia. I think that was a very emotional game for them last week. But Louisville has been able to run the ball really well because of the threat that Thrash
Yeah,
faces.
absolutely.
And I think that if you've got some guy that could potentially lock down Thrash or at least limit his ability, um, this is a team that's going to struggle to score points. And in my opinion, uh, North Carolina State has that guy in Shaheem Battle. I love this matchup between those two.
He's a good defensive
And
back. Yeah.
yeah, he's a very good defensive back. And so if they take away Thrash, you really start to limit what this offense is capable of doing. And if you've got a guy that can go one-on-one with him, you've got a really good shot. So I like NC State coming up in here, providing the first upset of the year for Louisville.
Okay. Fair challenge. I don't hate it. I've always been, like I said, I'm a big Dave Dorn fan. He's done a great job, so I wouldn't surprise me at all. But I understand that one. Yeah.
I like Kansas 16 over Texas. And I saw the spread, and I was kind of surprised it was this far. Kansas, while they did struggle a little bit, I think, against Nevada, this is an offense that scores points, dude. I mean, Jalen Daniels has looked phenomenal. He's got a really good group of receivers that are working really well with him. The running backs have been good. That offensive line really seems to actually be built up now, and there's something to deal with. I understand also that Texas in recent memory has really struggled with Kansas.
They have.
There's been a couple really bad upsets that Kansas has pulled over them in the last few years. I don't think Kansas is going to straight outright upset them this time, but I think it's going to be within a couple touchdowns. So plus 16 with Jalen Daniels, everything he's been able to do. The other thing about the Texas offense is while they're really good, we haven't seen them be particularly explosive. It's a team that's typically scoring 37 points a game, and anything above that's going to be really difficult. Kansas is going to be able to put some points on this team. I think that you're going to see this be a 7 to 10 point win for Texas.
Okay. I'm going out on a limb. I'm going to challenge this one. Largely because I think Texas is really good up front on defense. I mean, Ethan Burke, Tavondre Sweat, Collins, Murphy, their D-line might be the best in the country. They're really, really tough this year. And I think they're going to get after Daniels. Other teams have struggled blitzing Kansas because you leave so much open in the back. If you miss, Texas won't have to do that. Their front will be able to do that, and they'll be able to leave everybody else back there. And I think they give Kansas problems that the Jayhawks haven't faced yet this year. I think you bring up good points about Texas being good on offense but not explosive. I think they'll at least be consistent in this game, though. I think Worthy, Mitchell, Whittington will all be all right. They'll run the ball effectively. Jatavion Sanders has been one of the best tight ends in America this year. He's really been a player, which we figured he would be. But largely based on what I've seen out of Texas's defensive front, I'm going to roll the dice on this one and pick the Longhorns to cover this one. So to win by 17 or more, essentially. Yeah.
All right. Fair
it's
enough.
A big spread. You're right. Like it's to the point where the history of how this game has went down in Austin, it can't be underestimated, though. There's something about Kansas when they go there that they've had success. So I'm going against all of that in picking the Longhorns in this one.
Yeah, you're saying Texas is legit is basically what you're saying this year. So,
and I said week one, I think they were a playoff team, and I stand by that this far.
Fair enough. So 2 challenges. We went 2 rounds without a challenge, and round 3 brought challenges out for both games. Round 4, you like Bowling Green plus 24 over Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Bowling Green is an interesting team. Not that I like them so much, but I don't like Georgia Tech laying this many points against anybody. For me, like I saw that spread and I was like, wow, that for a team who is still kind of figuring themselves out, that seemed like an awfully large gap for me. And Georgia Tech is improved. Brent Key has done an all right job. Haynes King looks better than he ever did at Texas A&M, to be quite honest. Haynes is running the ball all right, and they have, throwing the ball. Eric Singleton has been a good receiver. They are doing a pretty good job of both running and passing. They've been a pretty mixed offense, but I just don't trust them to cover this many points. Bowling Green's quarterback is Connor Bazelak, who we've seen plenty of over his time at Mizzou and Indiana last year. He's not throwing particularly well. He's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns so far. They're not doing. Stewart has been all right at running back. There's nothing they're doing particularly well, but their defense is actually slowing the games down a decent amount, and they're keeping hold of the ball just enough where I don't think they lose by more than 24 in this game. It's basically like it's going to be one of those, like the first week of the year. I took someone against Michigan was favored by Coastal Carolina. That was it. No, East Carolina against Michigan. It's like it was a 35-point spread, and it's like I'm going to bet it, hold my nose, and just wait it out at the end that they don't cover it. And Michigan got close, and they didn't do it. That's what I'm doing here. I have no doubt Georgia Tech will win this game. I'm just banking that it's going to be a 21, 23-pointer, and I'm going to get across the finish line with Bowling Green being just under it.
Yeah, fair enough. It was one that I looked at, and I immediately thought about challenging it. But then I was like, yeah, I can't see Georgia Tech scoring more than 24 than Bowling Green. I just can't. Yeah. And so I decided to leave it alone. Georgia Tech has been able to score some points this year. I think Bowling Green will probably keep it, within a couple touchdowns most of the game, where Georgia Tech might pull away at the end.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment.
I like Oregon at minus 27.5 over Stanford. And obviously, I went against Oregon last week, and that burned me. They defeated Colorado by 36 points. That's not the reason why I'm picking them here. I'm picking this because Stanford has been really terrible all year.
The Stanford team is the worst P5 team in the country. They are awful. They're so bad. Yeah.
It's bad.
And, they have one elite level player on offense in Urasek at tight end. And the last two games, he's had a total of 5 targets. They're not even getting the ball to their good players. So,
well, they don't have time to get the ball to the good players. So
that might be it. Yeah, but
they're a mess in the trenches, both sides of the ball. They've got a couple players here and there that are like, okay, they'll probably be okay if they were somewhere else. And they'll be okay pros, but nothing special about the Stanford team.
No.
And Oregon is going to be able to put 42 on them before they take their starters out, and it might be like second quarter when they're doing it. It's going to be bad.
Yeah. And this Oregon team is better than going into the year. We knew they were a fringe top 10 team, pretty good. They might be better than we thought, though, or than I thought. I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth, but like someone asked me earlier this week, they said the Pac-12 looks like right now it may be the best conference in the country. It may be, but they said, the question became, who do you like, come playoff time if you were making a projection right now? And I said, out of the 3 we know, USC, Washington, Oregon, I'd have to pick Oregon right now out of the 3 of them, just because we've seen them play the best defense so far. USC hasn't had to. And they have the trump card in Caleb Williams, who is special. Washington is throwing the ball like it's going out of style. I mean, there's no throws that Penix can't make. They're lighting up the scoreboards, but they didn't play particularly good defense against Cal last week either. And when you get to playing those elite teams, I want to see better defense out of USC and Washington. We saw it against Oregon. Say what you want about Colorado. They had shown us the ability to put up a lot of points, and Oregon stifled them. And I think if they can stifle Colorado, you're not going to have a problem against Stanford doing that. So I'm with you on this one. I'm not.
Kyrie Jackson was phenomenal in that game too. I mean, just textbook cornerback shutdown, lockdown corner. Fantastic game for him.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right about that. And they're another team. Their defense, Almeave, the nose, and Casey Rogers at D-tackle. Their two interior D linemen are both playing really well.
And Brandon Dorless at the defensive end. He's been really awesome. Jordan Birch is another one that's playing extremely well.
Gamecock last year, Columbia native, went out to Oregon to the portal.
I mean, they've got a lot of guys. So you also as we get into the final round of Gridiron Eve, Texas A&M -6.5 over Arkansas.
Arkansas has been the most disappointing P5 team in the country for me so far. I thought they would do better. Now, we haven't seen Rocket Sanders do much. Part of this pick is it sounds like Rocket's not going to play again. And KJ Jefferson is a decent player. You know, when he has talent around him, he can do some things. He's not the creator, the guy that's going to do, something out of nothing, though. He needs that support. Their O-line is okay. A&M's D-line is all veterans, though, because they were all freshmen last year. I mean, they have the youngest defense in the country last year. So A&M's defense played bad against Miami. They've looked pretty good in every other game. 2 games we expected them to do. And then the Auburn one where they just look good. I'm in that one. Offensively, we've talked about Connor Wegman, who had been one of the best QBs in the SEC, is now out for the year. Max Johnson, formerly of LSU, will be the new starter, who Johnson looked pretty good last year until he got hurt early in the season, and that's when their whole season imploded. I think we see a shift there. Evan Stewart and the guys on the outside may get the ball a little bit less. Aeneas Smith has frequently been the beneficiary for Johnson. Johnson likes to target him a lot. And then his brother, the tight end, Jake Johnson, who we saw did catch a touchdown last week. We're going to continue to see 2-3 running backs from A&M get the ball. And I like A&M to cover this game. I've been vocal that I think they will be one of the most improved teams in the country, and I'm still riding with that one. I think they beat Arkansas by 7 or more.
This is one that I really have to think about because you have to remember you're a northern guy. I'm a southern guy. Granted, you went to University of South Carolina, so you got your taste of SEC, but typically when it comes to Big Ten football, you're definitely more the expert than I am. I'm more of an SEC guy, and we've talked about that on this show over the last year.
Neutral site game. I should have pointed that out. We're playing it at Jerry's
This is always a neutral site game.
Forgot about that. Yep.
And this game specifically is usually very close. It's a crazy game. The last couple of years it has been. It's come down to the wire both times.
Was it last year or the year before where it bounced off of the literal top of the upright? And it
was last year. Yeah. Yeah. So this is one of these games where it is always crazy. The last couple of years it's been really tight. In fact, those scores, as I consult the Bible, Phil Steele's magazine, in case you didn't catch on to the reference. Texas A&M was favored by 2 last year. They won 23-21. So that was a push.
Yep.
The year before, when they played Texas A&M was favored by 4. They lost 20-10. The year before that, 2020, the COVID year, crazy weird year. Favored by 13, won 42-31, did not cover. So
And that's probably A&M's, well, certainly A&M's best team of the Jimbo era. They were really
year
good that year.
year before that, 2019, lost favored by 23, won 31-27. Okay, so my point is this is one of these games that Arkansas always rises up for. And I could even go the next year. The last 5 years in this game, they are 0-4-1 against the spread. And it doesn't matter what it is. So this is not one that's going to tie because we got a 0.5 on it. It's not going to push. So I have to challenge it.
Okay.
History tells me I have to challenge this. And so for Arkansas, I think that they've got a good enough defense where they're going to be able to keep pressure on Max Johnson, and they're going to make this a really difficult game for their offense. It's going to be a low-scoring affair. It's going to be probably 21-18, something crazy like that.
That could be true.
I don't know if Arkansas wins, but I'm not so sure that Texas A&M is going to cover this as easily as a lot of people are thinking they are. And Arkansas has shown the ability to score points even in the games that they haven't looked good. The loss to BYU, they scored 31 points. They're a team that can score points as well. And so I think that they're going to have just enough at times. They're going to be able to make just enough happen to stay in this thing.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
So this one probably shocked you when you saw it. I like South Carolina plus 12.5 over Tennessee. And there's a couple points to this pick. And number one being that Tennessee, obviously, I love Tennessee. I mean, it's always here, very near and dear to me. It's just not been that impressive this year.
No.
I mean, there's at no point other than maybe the opener against Virginia have I sat there and thought, yeah, this is a really good team. Their defense is on the field too much. They don't have the playmaker that they had last year in Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton's not a guy that creates like Hendon can. They're still calling him overthrow Joe. I don't think he's as bad as he's been, but there's still issues there with getting, passes down the field. And then when you look at South Carolina on the other side, I mean, Spencer Rattler has been absolutely phenomenal the last couple of weeks. He's really been phenomenal all year. You go back to the
he's looking like the Spencer Rattler we thought we would see when he was a high school senior.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. I mean, when we looked at him against North Carolina, phenomenal game. Sacked 7 times under constant duress, didn't throw an interception. I mean, the first half of the Georgia game, really well. Second half got away from him. Yep. And then, you come out the last 2 games, you threw more touchdowns than incomplete passes in back-to-back games. That's crazy. And they won that Mississippi State game 37-30, which tells me if Spencer doesn't play like that, they don't win that game.
No.
So, to me, I like what South Carolina's doing offensively. I don't like Tennessee's offense as much. I think that this is Tennessee might still win, but South Carolina is going to give them a hell of a fight. Even up there in Knoxville, even up there, it's going to be 107,000 deep, totally sold out. I think is this an afternoon or a night game? I know it's not in the early window. Even with all of that,
this is the 7:30 Eastern game. It is later.
Yeah. Okay, so it is. Yeah. It is a night game. Even with all of that, South Carolina is going to put up a hell of a fight.
Yeah. Yeah. They Leger's doing well. Juice Wells has been hurt, but we thought he'd be the guy coming in. Mm-hmm. Their O-line really struggled the first 2 weeks. They're looking better, though. The last 2, the loss against Georgia and the win against Mississippi State, we've seen their front protect Rattler better than we thought, or better than we had seen the first couple weeks. And Tennessee's just not been impressive. Florida ran the ball all over them. I don't think South Carolina can run it that well, but I think they'll have some success, enough where they won't just be able to focus on Rattler throwing the ball. They'll have to respect them in both phases on offense there. And at this spread, I can't challenge it. I'm with you. I don't know if the Gamecocks will win. Being a Gamecock guy, I obviously hope they do. but I can't pick against him at 12.5.
No, you just can't. That's a really good spread, but I feel like South Carolina it's got a really good shot to cover that
Yeah.
and come out with that. So 3 challenges then, Mike.
Yep. Yeah, we got I'm on Louisville -3 against NC State. I'm on Texas -16 against Kansas, and I have Texas A&M -6.5 against Arkansas.
So we went 2 rounds without a single challenge.
Yeah.
And now we went into the 3rd round and we came out with 2 challenges, and now we've ended up with a final one. 2 challenges initiated by me, one by you. 15 points on the line. I'm getting these so that they will display here in a second.
Okay.
Sweet. There we go.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's where we're at. So it is going to be a good week of college football. It's not going to be as explosive as this past week was, I don't think. This past week. I mean, that's usually what happens is the week that I go to a football game, everything is going on in college football. The weeks that I have drill, whichever week I can't sit down to watch the game, everything's going on. That's usually what happens. So I'm used to that. But this was no exception. So a reminder, the score right now, Mike 20, Team Mike 20, Team Vogel 25 on top, baby. On top. So as we like to wrap up the show, as always, we always like to talk about the Heisman discussion. And let's just say that we've got a lot of guys that are the running for the Heisman right now.
We do. Yeah. And I do think, though, as much as we have a lot of guys, it remains the same as it did last week. We have 2 that are ahead of everybody else. Penix and Caleb Williams are the top 2. They're out front. And whoever is going to overtake them is really going to have to do a lot.
Well, yeah, no. Penix his numbers have been better than anybody this year. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He's really taken a step up this year. There's not a lot that you can say that's bad about his game. And that's coming from, an offense that's had to adjust to him as well. He's a left-handed thrower. I don't know if have we ever had a lefty quarterback win the Heisman before?
Matt Leinart, USC.
Leinart. Yeah, okay. It's been a while. But
I can't think of, before him, I'm sure he wasn't the first, but I can't think of one more recent, in recent memory that did.
He's making a really impressive case right now. I mean, his jump this year has been phenomenal. And then Caleb, I've gotten the chance to watch Caleb a little bit, but not as much to have an opinion to say that he deserves to be dethroned at this point. So I'm going to default to you on that. And then when you kind of start to look at these other guys, I mean, Bo Nix is going to come up in that conversation. Shader probably took a step back with the loss to Oregon, but Oregon's offense is on a whole nother level right now. And then you brought up a good point last week when we were talking about regions, and there's not really a guy that you can point to in the Big Ten and go, yeah, he's a Heisman guy. Even in the SEC, you're struggling a little bit right now. There's not really a guy that you go, yep, that's our Heisman right there.
Yeah, I think there's 2 guys in the South who would be in the mix, Quinn Ewers and Jordan Travis, neither of whom are in the SEC, but both of whom might be in it at the end, especially we're expecting their teams to be in the running to go to the playoffs, which would obviously help them. And if LSU keeps going on a heater and does what we've seen, they didn't look great against Arkansas. They did against Mississippi State. But if they're a 10-win team, Jaden Daniels could work his way back in there.
That is another good one. Yep, Jaden's looked solid outside of that Florida State game. And LSU's probably got, honestly, a really good shot to contend for the SEC West right now.
I've been steadfast the whole year. I think they will win the West, and I'm sticking to that at this point. Another guy, it just hit me, a guy who's been playing great that I know you like, who probably deserves a mention, Cam Ward, doing a heck of a job so far.
Yeah, I love Cam Ward. I
And
love him.
Wazoo's on a bye this week, so we will not see him play this weekend. But they're really impressive so far.
Washington State is another one of those teams that's right there in the mix. Like, they're going to upset some people. They're not going to end up being the top team, but they're going to upset one or two of those, USC, UCLA, Oregon mix, Washington mix. They're going to take one of them down.
Agreed.
So
I
maybe
think
two of them.
Yeah, they're one of those teams that they won't be in the playoffs, but they may have a say in who does make it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to be one of the big teams you're going to have to take down in the Pac-12, and we got a lot of Pac-12 teams that are killing it. So,
yeah, do.
But I think that's about all we got today, isn't it, Mike? You got anything else that you wanted to bring up?
No, nothing else.
Good deal. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Huesmann CFB. Follow me on Twitter at Draft Vogel. Follow the show at Gridiron Eve. Back at it next week. Should be back at the regular time. Hopefully, man, with my life right now, dude, who knows? But we're gonna give this a shot. Be back on Wednesday night. Ready for college football action. We're rolling right now.